This is the story of how the company that invented the photograph as we know it also invented the thing that would kill it, and then locked that thing in a drawer for 30 years. Because in 1975, in a lab in Rochester, New York, a 24-year-old Kodak engineer built the world's first digital camera. He carried it to a room full of executives, and they looked at the future, in black and white, and they told him it was very nice, and to please not tell anyone about it. Today, the company that owned 90% of an entire industry is a penny stock and a nostalgia filter. So welcome to the autopsy. On this channel, I put one dead company on the table and work out what really stopped its heart. No filters, no flash. Just the cause of death. Tonight's patient, Eastman Kodak. And the cause of death is not what you have been told. Let me take you back to the scene of the crime, which for me, looked an awful lot like a chemist counter, about 1996. If you grew up when I did, a photo was an act of faith. You had 24 shots on a roll, maybe 36 if you were flash, and you could not see a single one of them. You pointed the little plastic Kodak at your cousin, you pressed the button, the flash went off half a second too late, and then you waited. You dropped the roll at the chemist in its little film canister, you came back a week later, and you paid actual money to find out that 11 of your 24 precious memories were a thumb, a ceiling, and your nana with her eyes shut. That was the deal. That was photography. And the company that ran that entire deal, the yellow box on every shelf on earth, was Kodak. For 100 years, Kodak did not sell cameras. Not really. Kodak sold the gun cheap, so it could sell you the bullets forever. The camera was the giveaway, the film, the developing, the paper, the chemicals, that was the business. 9 out of 10 rolls of film sold in America had that yellow box. At its peak, Kodak employed something like 145,000 people and printed money with a profit margin that would make a drug cartel blush. A Kodak moment was not just an ad slogan. It was a toll booth on every birthday, every wedding, every holiday, for 4 generations. And here is the part that should keep you watching, no fast forwarding, this is the good bit. The weapon that would eventually empty every one of those toll booths was not invented by Sony, or Canon, or some kid in a garage. It was invented inside Kodak. By Kodak. On Kodak's dime. So roll the feature presentation. The story of the company that took the picture of its own funeral. His name was Steven Sasson, and in 1975 he was an engineer. Kodak had basically given a problem to keep him busy. Could you build a camera with no film in it at all? So he did. The thing he built was the size of a toaster, and weighed about 8 pounds. It captured an image that was 100 pixels by 100 pixels, that is 1/100th of a single megapixel, a grainy gray smudge you would be embarrassed to send today by accident. It recorded onto a cassette tape, the same kind you taped songs off the radio with, and it took 23 whole seconds to write one black and white photo. It was, by every measure, a terrible camera. But it was the first one that didn't need the bullets. It didn't need film. It didn't need developing. It didn't need the chemist, or the week, or the yellow box. And that is exactly why the room went quiet. Now I have to stop here and be honest with you, because that is the rule on this channel. No spoilers, I cannot back up. The version of this story you have heard 100 times is that Kodak saw the digital camera, panicked, and buried it in a vault to protect film. And that version is too clean. The truth is messier and, frankly, worse. The camera was not market ready, it was a toaster that made smudges. There was no market for it in 1975, there was no screen to look at it on and no way to print it. Kodak did not hide it, they patented it in 1978, and they made a fortune off that patent later. And over the next 30 years Kodak did not ignore digital at all. They poured billions into it. They built some of the best digital cameras on the market. They invented the first megapixel sensor. So get the lazy story out of your head right now. Kodak did not fail because it missed the future. Kodak failed because it saw the future perfectly, and the future paid worse than the past. That is the diagnosis, and it is the whole episode, so let me develop it slowly. The problem was never the technology. The problem was the maths. A roll of film was one of the most profitable consumer products ever made. Gross margins reported up around 70%. You bought the film, you bought the developing, you bought the prints, and then for the good photos you bought more prints. A digital photo broke every link in that chain. You take it for free. You look at it for free. You delete the bad ones for free, which, given my photography, was about 11 in 24. The thing that made digital wonderful for you, that it cost nothing, was the thing that was lethal to Kodak. Every digital photo a customer took was a sale that did not happen. So Kodak was in the impossible position of owning the cure to its own disease, and knowing that the cure was a poison to its own bank account. To save the company, they would have had to destroy the most profitable thing the company did. On purpose. While it was still making money. And no boardroom on earth volunteers for that. So watch what they did instead, because this is the genius and the tragedy of it. Kodak did go digital, but they went digital in the one way that let them keep believing in paper. They told themselves a story. People will always want a print. So when digital cameras took off, Kodak's big bet was not the camera. It was the kiosk. Those little print stations in the supermarket where you would plug in your memory card and pay to turn your digital photos back into the thing Kodak understood, a physical print they could charge you for. They were trying to drag the future back through the chemist counter. And for a while, the spreadsheet even agreed with them. By the late 2000s, Kodak's digital cameras were a disaster on the balance sheet. In 1 year, the film business still threw off about $34 million of operating income, while the digital camera division lost $349 million. Read that again. Their digital products lost $10 for every one the dying film business made. From where the accountants sat, every step into the future was a step deeper into the red. So they kept one foot on the paper. They were not blind. They were anchored. And then there is the part that genuinely hurts, the missed shot that should have saved everything. In 2001, Kodak bought a little website called oPhoto. oPhoto was a place where you uploaded your photos and shared them with people. Sit with that for a second. In 2001, Kodak owned a photo sharing network. They were sitting on the exact idea. Upload your life, share it with everyone, that would become Facebook and Flickr and Instagram. They had it. They bought it. And then they used it as a billboard to sell prints. oPhoto's whole job, in Kodak's hands, was to nudge you to order physical copies of the photos you had just shared digitally. They owned the campfire, and they used it to sell firewood. Because they could not imagine a photograph whose entire value was that it was never printed at all. And the timing on this is almost too cruel to be real. In 2012, the same month Kodak filed for bankruptcy, Facebook bought a photo-sharing app with 13 employees and no revenue for $1 billion. It was called Instagram. Kodak had owned that idea 11 years earlier. And it had used it to sell paper, so let me call the time of death. On the 19th of January 2012, Eastman Kodak, 131 years old, the company that had taught the world how to remember itself, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The cash was gone. The film annuity had finally bled out, and there was nothing underneath it, because everything underneath it had been quietly starved for 30 years to keep the film business comfortable. The yellow box came off the shelves. The chemist counters closed. And the great machine that had monetized every memory in the Western world could no longer pay its own bills. Now for the autopsy finding the cause of death, I would actually write on the certificate. It is not ignore digital. Cross that out. The cause of death is that Kodak invented the future, measured it honestly, and correctly calculated that the future was less profitable than the present, and so it optimized, rationally, brilliantly, all the way into the ground. They protected the 70% margin instead of the 100% company. They monetized the patents on digital, while letting the products on digital die. They sold the prints when the world wanted the sharing. Every single one of those decisions made the next quarter look better. And added together, in a straight line, they killed a 131-year-old giant. The line did not go flat, because Kodak couldn't see. It went flat because Kodak could see exactly where the money was, and the money was in the past. So here is the moral of the movie, the X-ray you should take home, and then I will let you go. There is a fish swimming in the water at every big profitable company right now, and it has a name. It is the most dangerous thing in business, a fat, healthy, beloved revenue stream that you would have to murder in order to survive. For Kodak it was film. For Blockbuster, the giant we buried last time, it was late fees and stores. It is the same disease, and it is always fatal, because the company's own success is the thing whispering in its ear to do nothing. The most profitable thing you do is very often the exact thing you will die defending. Kodak did not lack vision. Kodak had perfect vision. It took a crystal clear, beautifully exposed, perfectly focused photograph of the iceberg, and then it filed the photo, protected the deck chairs, and went down with 145,000 people and the best camera in the world in its hand. A kid dropped his last roll of film at a chemist somewhere around 2004 and never went back to collect the prints because by then the photos were already on a screen. He didn't know he was a pallbearer. None of us did. That is the thing about a Kodak moment. You never realize it's the last one until the film runs out. So that is the autopsy. The picture finally developed, and there was nobody left in the frame. I'll see you on the next table.